He sold his business. He got like 50 million bucks. And he said, I actually felt depressed and poor after I sold it. Cash flow is king. And so you have this cash flow and it's flowing in and you feel great. And then you sell. And now you have a lot of money in your bank account personally, but the cash flow is at zero now. If you're comfortable, you're not growing. We are live for another episode of Dental Marketing Theory. And before we get into the awesome content that we're going to share with you today, I need you to do me a favor. Go give a thumbs up on whatever platform you're listening to. If you are on YouTube, thumbs it up. It costs you nothing. It literally costs you nothing. And it's a money back guarantee. So please just go do it. I know you're not doing it. Please go do it. All right, good. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or any of these others, it really, really helps me to continue to make content if you just do that. So thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. And today I'm excited because I have two people that I'll share how I met you guys. So we were at, what event was it? It was Dykema. We're at Dykema, and there was a pre-show to Dykema that Tusk was doing, and they did a great job with that. And I'm sitting on the back row, and Thomas was sitting right next to me, and he's typing away on this really cool keyboard with a phone attached. And I was like, man, that's really cool. And we got talking. He was like, are you a dentist? I'm like, no. Are you a dentist? And he said, nope, me neither. And I started telling him what I did. He told me what he did. And I said, man, I would love to have you on a podcast, figure out how to let my customers know and the listeners know what you do. And he said, okay, well, I'm going to actually introduce you to Mike. And so Mike, Thomas, and I all got on a phone call, and it was like, man, this is really cool what you guys are doing. So I was actually just on your guys' podcast, Mike, last week, and we started talking. You actually talked a lot about the elite exit that you do for dental offices, and really helping. This is the part that helped me, was you help dentists from a personal aspect as well as a business aspect of how to actually exit your dental office when it is time to sell. And you had a really cool checklist and all that good stuff. So number one, thanks for coming on. And number two, could you tell us a little bit about how you do that at your company and what you guys provide for dentists?
Yeah, sure, man. I'm glad to do that. And I love that intro there about asking for all the reviews and all that kind of good stuff, likes and subscribes and all that. I try to do that on my podcast as well. But yeah, the elite dental exit is something that is unique in the industry right now. They're not really people that focus on dentists or dental business owners, right? Everybody talks about practice owners, but really what these folks are dental business owners, right? Just like business owners I work with in manufacturing or in all kinds of other industries, they just happen to be in that consumer medical space and delivering dental care. So the idea around the elite dental exit is really based on three things. One is when you are ready to transition from your business, that you do it in three ways. One is you maximize transition value, transaction value. The second is that you do it on your terms. And what we're talking about there are deal terms that make sense for you. And Thomas helps me figure out that kind of stuff for our clients. And then the third piece is doing it without regret. And doing it without regret is probably the most difficult part of the whole exit. And as a matter of fact, I was teaching a class today in the Business Owner Transition Academy, and we were talking to our students about the number one reason that people really regret the fact that they sold their business is not, that it wasn't enough money or whatever. It's the fact that they didn't prepare for the exit.
Hey, before we go any further in the show, I need you to visit a website for me, dentalmarketingmanager.com. If you're a dental office that has somebody managing some of your marketing internally, it's so important that you get them trained. And right now, there is no standard, there is no set of KPIs that people use to build out this position. And so it's been a little bit like the Wild Wild West, but we're aiming to change that. On December 8th and 9th of 2022, we are going to be hosting the first ever Dental Marketing Bootcamp, and we're going to be covering everything that there is to know about being a marketing manager, all the KPIs, how to partner with a marketing vendor, how to build out a position, how to get more patient referrals, 2023 plan calendared out, and everything that you're going to need to manage your dental marketing. And this is not something that you're going to want to miss if you are a marketing manager. And you're not going to want to have your team miss this if you have somebody helping you internally with your marketing. So we hope that you will come. A lot of the SMC clients are going to be there. And if you don't work with SMC, that's totally fine. We still want you there. We want to help you. We want to help your businesses grow. So go check us out, dentalmarketingmanager.com. We have limited space, limited opportunities, and we hope to see you there. Yeah. I was watching a video yesterday, and I want to go down this road. Okay. So This guy is a really famous business person, and he sold his business. He got like 50 million bucks. And he said, I actually felt depressed and poor after I sold it. And then he explained why. Here's what he said. He said, cash flow is king. And so you have this cash flow and it's flowing in and you feel great and you feel like you see all this money flowing through your business and you have a lot of options before you. And then you sell and it's sold. And now you have a lot of money in your bank account personally, but the cash flow is at zero now. You don't have that cash flow anymore. So now you start a new chapter of your life. And he said, I was not prepared for that. And now I'm depressed. And now I'm lonely. And now I don't have the support team. And I didn't have this and I don't have this. And he just went through this long list of things that he was feeling, even though he was what we view from the outside as very, very successful. He was not personally ready for that transition and instantly thought of you. So tell me, break that down. Like what are people regretting when they sell their business?
Well, I think, I have a similar story. I have a friend that I helped several years ago sell an oil services business out in Texas. And his big dream was to go buy a plantation, and he was going to do that. And his family was going to come and see him at the plantation. He was going to hunt and fish and do all this kind of cool stuff. About a month into it, he called me up, and it was late in the evening. He was really sounding bad. And I said, what is wrong? And he said, you know what? I just don't feel comfortable because I received a paycheck. I paid myself when I had my business. And right now, I just don't know where the money's coming from. I've got plenty of it, but I just don't know how I'm getting it. And so I worked with the financial advisors on that, and we put him on a paycheck plan. Basically, we gave him a paycheck every 2 weeks and put it in his account just like he had it when he was running his business. And he loved it. That solved that problem. But I think that one of the major problems that people have is the expectations that they generate that are really not in line with what the rest of the family is thinking about, right? I mean, they get it in their mind, hey, this is going to be so cool. Everybody's going to want to come see me. But guess what? Everybody's got a life. Everybody is doing stuff. They're working. They're raising their kids. They can't go see dad out on the plantation. And that is an area that we've got a little successful. I mean, success is equal to process times vision times desire. Okay. And when business owners go through the sales process, they sign an LOI, a letter of intent. And at that point, they've picked the horse they're going to ride, who they're going to sell it to, and what kind of consideration is going to be paid and the terms it's going to be paid on. But 50% of the time, deals fail once that LOI is signed. And a large percentage of those deals fail because of the emotion, the vision piece of the success formula. The owner did not prepare for their transaction. They kind of pushed the easy button thinking that, hey, this is not going to be a problem. Somebody's going to want to pay me what I want. I'm going to transition. I'm going to buy the plantation. My family's going to come see me. It's all going to be good. But they didn't talk with anybody about it, right? Those vision elements. How tied to my business am I? What am I going to do afterwards? I'm going to play golf every single day. Well, we all know that doesn't work, right? And so they build it in their head, or they don't build it at all, which is even worse. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later or a month later, they realize, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Wow.
So
that's
generally it's not the money.
And that's a problem because you have to go back and you kind of have to rebuild. And I love what you got there. Success equals PVD. Give us those initials again. What's the PVD stand for?
Yeah, P is process, and in a transaction process is, what do the lawyers do? What do the financial advisors do? What do the CPAs do? They all have set processes that they must do in there. And really, my job is just to work with the owner to make sure that the owner understands what they're supposed to do, what the expectations are, how much they charge, what the timeline should be. So that's just making sure that we're generating perspective, and we're controlling expectations. Vision, the V, that's internal. That's where we do a lot of question and answer. We take them through this process of discussion and discovery about what it is they're going to do after the sale. And then the last piece is desire, right? And desire generally is a function of the first two. If everything's going well in the process and everything's going well in the vision, then desire stays high. If things start to break down the process, or these elements of vision, I'm too tied to my business, I can't disassociate my identity. What am I going to do? What's my elevator speech going to be the day after I sell my house?
I see what you're saying. So, and probably what we could relate this to the audience, and I've never sold a dental practice before, but I'm thinking through my head, the first time you probably bought or sold a house. And so you go in and you're like, hey, I want to buy a house. And it's like, okay, go find a real estate agent, right? And the real estate agent goes, sure, no problem. Are you approved? And you're like, no, I'm not. So they take you to go get approved, and there's a whole process for that. And they ask you for like 40 billion documents and your kids' birth certificates and just all this stuff that you have to come up with and you have to find. So now you're like, now I'm approved. I can buy any house, right? Sure. Let's go look. And so you start looking at these houses, and they're a little bit out of your range, right? You always want the house that you can't have. And then you have to kind of play with your desire a little bit. You got to downgrade it a little bit. And then you're like, okay, this is the one I want. And then what happens? Now there's all this competition that's also competing with you. And at the same time, they're raising interest rates. So you're not going to be able to get that house because now you can't afford that house, or you need more down payment. And then you get in, and then so now you finally, they take the offer, and it's like, yes, I got it. And then but then they're like, oh, no, there's all these conditions, and there's the inspections, and there's this. And then they realize, oh, there's a better offer over here. I can't get out of contract with this person, so I'm going to make them not want this house by give them all these loops to jump through. And all of a sudden at the end, you're like, or towards the end, you're like, I don't even want this house. I'd rather just rent the apartment that I'm in, because the process was so painstakingly long. Now, after you go through it the first time, you kind of get it, right? So now you're like emotionally prepared to buy your second house or your third house, but selling your first practices or selling your first group, you're not emotionally prepared for it. You're not aligning those things because you don't know what you don't know. You're just looking at the shiny thing at the end. So I love the way you broke that down. Now, you also have something called the I'm Good checklist. IMGOOD, and it's a checklist, and you trademarked this. What is that?
Yeah, so the I'm Good checklist is all about the key value drivers, right? We have the three legs of the stool. The first is maximizing transaction value. The second is doing it on your terms. And third is without regret. But first, we got to maximize transaction value. As we go into the letter of intent phase, we want to make sure that the owner, the dental practice owner, the business owner, is going into that LOI at the high end of their valuation range. Once we get them into the high end of their valuation range, then by doing all this preparation and working through the I'm Good checklist, they're prepared to defend their value after the LOI and into the purchase agreement. So I'm Good is this. The I stands for increasing profitability, right? Increasing EBITDA, the cash flow of your business. And having a plan to continue to increase that cash flow. The M is institutionalizing transferable management, or in the dental business industry, it's institutionalizing transferable staff. We're having big staffing problems right now in the dental industry. We want to make sure that those key staff are going to stay with the business and move on after it is transitioned. So the G is top line growth. What is your growth plan? And even if you can't execute it. If you've got the idea and you can document that idea and tie that idea to pro forma financial statements, then you've given a roadmap for the buyer. That DSO that's coming in and goes, okay, you know what? These guys really know their region. They've got it wired. Because of that, we want to pay them more, right? They've got a real plan. The first O is critical. It's optimizing financial statements, making sure that your financials are in good order and your financial processes are in good order. Anytime a potential buyer comes in and looks at your financial statements and sees that there's some type of uncertainty associated with your financial statements, they're going to pay you less. So we want to make sure those are buttoned up. The second O is operational processes, documenting your operational processes, how you're working with your marketing firm, with your supply chain, your vendors, your leases, your HR, your hiring processes, the throughput of your patients, all of those processes.
All the easy stuff, right?
Yeah, nothing to it, right? Yeah,
that's easy. You should
it's
be able
kind
to
of the
put that in a
roadmap.
one pager SOP
Oh
and
yeah,
call it a day.
Yeah, nothing to it. But the fact is that buyers are going to have their own processes, but you want to show that you've been running your business well, right? And guess what happens when you actually start documenting that stuff? You and I talked about this on the show last week, right? Once you start actually documenting your marketing processes, targeting your marketing processes, making sure that you're actually bringing in the ideal patient, what does that do to profitability?
Yeah, it goes through the roof.
That's
right.
And
then
it's great.
Let's walk through this. So this is an interesting one from my perspective. So
sure.
you have the seller. The seller wants to maximize the profit and the opportunity for themselves. Then you have the buyer, and the buyer does want to buy a dental practice that you have worked out to be as profitable as possible because that's good for them. But the buyer always wants to buy on where they can grow opportunity. If you've maximized your practice out in every category, who's going to want to buy that, right? Because it's like, well, how do I get my my side of it out? How am I going to make money on it? And it's interesting because every group has different things that they can focus on. So some groups want to buy offices that have never marketed before because they're really good at marketing. Some groups want to buy practices because of the real estate play. Some of them just want to buy it because it's, you have people that are working there and they need bodies, right? So there's these different ways that these organizations capitalize on the opportunities. So how do you balance my growth as a dental office that I want to sell, and at the same time, you also take advantage of opportunities for the buyer on their side and kind of marry those two?
Well, you actually have to think about what are the motivations of the various types of buyers, right? So you may be looking at let's say you're looking at another group practice that is building a DSO. They're bolting on additional smaller groups to build out their DSO. In that case, they're doing a couple of things. One is they're trying to get a larger volume. They're trying to build a larger EBITDA base because with size comes multiple. So they're increasing value just by bringing on very good cash flowing companies. Okay. Now, you also may you have a financial buyer out there that is they're putting investment capital work to buy future cash flows. If you have a great business that is humming along, just throwing off cash in the current operation, that's a good candidate. That's a good target. Now, you also may have somebody that is trying to expand geographically. So if you are the best practice in your geography and you have somebody that is building a platform and trying to move into that geographic region, well, guess who's the first candidate to be picked up, right? Who's the cornerstone piece of that geographic region? It's going to be the best in the business.
So just so I understand this correctly, you have geographical things at play. You have real estate at play. You have each section of your business and the opportunities that those create. as
Yep.
well as other things that they may want to bolt onto your practice. So maybe you have 5 GP offices and they kill it, but you don't do implants, and so
All right.
they want to add in implants to all 5 of those. So that's a lot, because it's almost like I watch football, and I'm sitting here watching football, and I was watching the Seahawks and the Broncos play, and I watched how the Seahawks won, and they shouldn't have won, right? Because they
That's
got
right.
Russell Wilson. They have a better defense. They have, but they should have had a better offense, but somehow they figured out how to win that game. And
Right.
and I'm sitting there going through in my head as a coach from Pete Carroll's perspective of like, how did he do that? And Russell Wilson knows that defense probably better than anybody else, but Pete Carroll knows Russell Wilson probably better than anybody else, right? So it's like
Yep.
you have all these sides competing for this best outcome. It's a lot. It's a lot to go through.
It really is. And look, there's professionals out there. I'm not a M&A advisor, right? I'm going to help coordinate all of the activities around the sale, right? I'm gonna work with the M&A guys. I'm gonna work with Thomas and the financial planning group. I'm gonna work with the CPAs. I'm gonna work with the attorneys, the Dykema guys, right? And so the M&A advisor is a great source of knowledge here because they know what all of these different constituencies are actually looking for. So
Got
your
it.
particular practice may fit best with, Group A. And so they're going to market to Group A first because their job is to maximize value for you.
So let's compare and contrast. So you got
Sure.
the M&A guy who's going to find all these nook and crannies. They're the offensive coach. They're the Pete Carroll, right? Where they're going to know
Yep.
all the different things going on. You're coming in and you're providing that. Well, what are you providing? So how do you contrast to him? What are you doing that's different than the M&A guys?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, we're going to. So if you think about what generally happens with a client, right? What generally happens is the doctor is in the center of a group of advisors, the circle of advisors, right? And they are all trying to tell the doctor something about how to sell their business. And they're giving them good advice. The lawyers are telling them what to do. The CPAs are telling them what to do. The financial advisors are giving them advice. The CPAs are doing stuff. And the M&A guys are doing it. Well, the problem is that guess what? That business owner is great at being a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They're not great at being an M&A guy, at selling a business. So a guy like me comes in and gets in the center of the circle. The doctor comes out and becomes the business owner that he is and becomes the CEO of the process. And what I do is I help coordinate the activities and really the best thinking of the group, and then provide recommendations and advice to the owner about what's the best way to maximize transaction value on your terms and without regret.
Got it. Okay. That
And
makes a lot of
complete the
sense.
elite exit.
Got it. Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. That helps clear it up in my head. And then, so last question for you, and then I want to jump over to Thomas and some of what he provides and love your feedback there as well. But
Sure.
So what do you see? Because you work in a lot of different industries. So you work with a lot of
Yep.
dentists, but you also work in a lot of other industries. So
Sure.
what is the biggest weakness that you're seeing right now in the dental industry when it comes to selling their practices that people in the dental industry are just like totally missing?
Well, I think that what it is that there are a lot of, probably everybody listening to this podcast has received an unsolicited offer from somebody.
Yeah, I've even gotten them.
Yeah, I get them. And, so, but everybody is out there trying to put capital to work. And I think that probably the biggest miss that happens out there is that people try to do it themselves and not bring in an advisory group that can help them. It does cost money, but look, let's say you've got, $2 million worth of EBITDA, right? And you have a range of multiples from 6 to 10. Okay. 2 times 6 is 12. Okay. 10 times 2 is 20. That's a big range of EBITDA of potential outcomes, right? $12 million, $20 million. And if you have to pay your advisory group, how much are you willing to pay your advisory group to generate an extra $4 or $5 million in proceeds?
Wow. Yeah.
Right. because they've coordinated advice, they know the market, they've gone out, they've helped you optimize and complete that elite exit. So it may seem like a lot of money as you're starting to pay it out, but once you realize the benefit of it, it makes a whole lot of sense.
It's same as selling a house. Like I've gone through
Mhm.
the process and had a real estate agent and was just like, whatever, here, didn't
Yep.
capitalize on any of the opportunities. Then I worked with somebody who helped me capitalize on the full potential of my house when I
Yep.
sold, and the difference was crazy. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing, right? Like, yeah, you are going to pay a little bit more, but you're going to make a lot more. I really like that. So now, Thomas, you help fulfill the role from a financial standpoint, but really you are fulfilling it not just from, hey, is this going to make money, but how do I personally, as the dentist, make sure that I am going to be able to continue to live the way that I think that I need to after the sale? So, could you give me a little bit of breakdown on how you participate in that process?
Yeah, exactly. And really, what you mentioned earlier, we referred to as the wealth gap. And so, as you mentioned, as a business owner, they're used to high cash flow, and they're essentially trading that future cash flow for selling their practice or their business, and they're basically fast tracking and getting a lot of that money up front. And so they've been accustomed to a certain lifestyle in terms of income, and now the income may be going away or be reduced substantially. And so a lot of the planning that we do is not only financial, but also kind of mentally and making sure emotionally that they're ready for what the next chapter in life brings. And so we run these different scenarios and stress test all these different
Mm,
possibilities because, as you mentioned, every deal that they get is different. Every DSO, every potential buyer has a different structure and different opportunity sets. And so if we're doing our jobs well, we're trying to analyze and stress test what each of those options looks like. Because at the end of the day, they may not take the offer that gives them the most financially, right? Part of it is the work back, what that looks like, how much autonomy they want after they sell. And so there's a lot of planning that goes into it. And again, I think what you mentioned earlier, we see it a lot with like Olympic athletes, these elite athletes that once they reach the pinnacle of success, they're depressed because they've
hmm
always been striving for something, but that's also their identity has
Yeah.
been whatever athlete they are. And, for our clients, it's that business owner, that dentist. And all of a sudden that changes. And if you don't do proper planning and think about, like Mike mentioned, how are you going to be fulfilled in retirement? You're kind of setting yourself up for regret. And that's the whole point of the elite exit is to try to avoid having that seller's regret.
Yeah, I love that. So, walk me through some of the regrets that people have afterwards that you're really trying to stress test on, because it's really, there's a lot there. So, let's try to unpack that.
So I would say, as Mike mentioned, not having proper representation. So on the back end, once you sign the documents, if you realize that, oh my gosh, I didn't have certain documents buttoned up properly, and now you're kind of stuck with. Um,
So let's work through that. I'm a dentist.
mhm.
I just signed. I'm a random dentist, and we've never talked before. And I'm like, guys, I just sold. I sold my 5 practices. I got $40 million in the bank now. But I had no idea what I was doing. I totally winged it. What are the first places that you're going to go and go, Gary, you should have probably thought about this.
So I would say, for one, making sure you really understand, if there's an earnout, what that looks like. A lot of times there's a recapitalization event, right? They might a potential buyer will show them what their equity is worth and they can sell it for, and so it's understanding, the management team of maybe the private equity backed group, what their outlook and their vision is, and maybe they haven't gotten to know the management team, and all of a sudden, they're starting to have conversations that they weren't privy to, or maybe things were unfolding differently and they weren't happy with the direction that the company's headed. So really understanding that up front is crucial.
Just for me, because I'm simple, so I only understand things through sports analogy.
All right.
So a quarterback makes $100 million a year, but guaranteed is only 20 million, and
Right.
then the other 80 is not guaranteed, meaning the team can change their mind, they can cut them, you can get hurt and not get that money. Is that kind of what you're talking about there?
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a great analogy there. And so, whether it's having to do different procedures that they may not have wanted to do before, or maybe they're not collecting as much as they did previously, and that impacts their income. I was talking to an oral surgeon recently who, after making a change, realized that they're not collecting like he was doing previously. So his team was very skilled at actually, kind of beating up these insurance companies and actually getting the collections. And there's been this delay, and he's found that the new team, the management team, isn't as effective and doesn't know that that system as well. And so that has been a pretty big impact to his income and has led to some frustrations. And so that would be one, real life example. And so
I know one of the things that is prevalent in dentistry is, hey, I'm going to take this job because they're going to pay me 40% of my collections, and then the other job was only going to pay me 30. So I took the 40%. But no one ever asked the question of 40% of what? Like, how many new patients? What's your production going to be? What is your projected going to look like? Because maybe that 30% was better because they have more new patients coming in and things like that. And I noticed that a lot, where people focus on that top number, but people forget to ask the questions about that lower number.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that is a deal structure item that many owners just don't understand. The earnout, if it's the earnout on a top line revenue, well, that's actually pretty easy to understand. But anytime the farther down the P&L you go, the more games can be played with what the numbers are on the bottom. So if your earnout is structured on EBITDA, then wow, well, you got to really define what that is. If your rollover equity is a class of equity that does not participate at the same level as the owners, then you could be way down on the cap chart. So that you may be the last person in line to get paid out on that rollover event. So there's a lot of things that you said $40 million, right? Well, just like you said with the quarterback, it's what is that $40 million actually made of? And what's the probability that you're actually going to get paid the $40 million? When Thomas does his thing, as I'm advising the client, I tell them, hey, talk to Thomas. We want to make sure that at the closing table, you get all the cash you need to actually meet your financial objection. Okay? Because anything that comes to you after the initial cash at the closing table is subject to some kind of risk.
Yeah. Which sounds so simple, right? It sounds so simple, but if you haven't been through the process, again, buying the house, you don't know that you should have locked in your interest rate, and the loan officer forgot to do it, and now you lose the deal over that. Again, simple thing, so small, but you just don't know. There's no way to know that on the first time of buying a house that you need to do that. So walk me through some of the red flags of selling a practice when people are going through the process and they're thinking about selling their office. Red flags and deals that you just know right away, hey, this is going to be a problem and we might need to look for someone else as a suitor.
Well, I would say that the first red flag is if you as an owner decide to try to do this by yourself, okay, and don't have a deal team that is taking it all the way back to marketing the firm properly, right? So at the very beginning of the process, you're going to start talking to, you may start working with us, right? As you start working with us, we're going to start working with you 36 months prior to you actually even, getting to the closing table. So if you start thinking about, okay, what does it really take? What's the timeline look like? Well, here's the closing table. Now back that up 8 months. And that's going to be where the M&A team starts marketing and working toward closing to getting to that closing table. Back it up another 18 months on top of that. And that's where we are doing all of the practice prep work, right? We're taking a look at foundational documents. We're going through the I'm Good checklist. We're building out a required element, which is the financial planning, right? I won't work with a client that has not done or is not in the process of doing a financial plan. We have a 5-phase process that we use for every single company that we work with. And that first phase is assessing the owner's readiness to transition and the business's readiness to transition. Phase 2 is documenting the recommendations for both the owner and for the business, and that includes the I'm Good checklist type items. Mm-hmm. Phase 3 is coaching and mentoring and value driver improvement. So that's where we're bringing in, people like Dee Fisher, and we're bringing in maybe starting with the M&A guys. We're bringing in legal guys to do pre-sale due diligence, to take a look at all of those documents to make sure they're actually ready to sell the company.
All right, Thomas. So from your end, what are some things that recently that you've been seeing over and over and over again when people are selling, where people have taken advantage of something that was a pleasant surprise to them at the end of the process?
I would say understanding that they have more autonomy than they previously thought. This isn't exactly what you asked, Gary. I would tell you, once someone explores the possibility of selling to a DSO and they have a conversation with someone that's in the industry, an M&A advisor, and they really understand that this space has evolved and changed, and it's not kind of, the DSO is not kind of like the evil player, like there's this misconception or misperception. There's so many different types of DSOs out there, and the focus is now on, there's a big focus on culture, but also, if you want to maintain as much autonomy as a lot of them will let you do that. And so there's been a pleasant surprise on the back end.
That's so true.
I've had people sell and they've, maybe they're 6 months into it and they're still using the supplies that they wanted, but they have a team there to support them as they see fit or as they want to delegate. So I think that's been a pleasant surprise.
I have so many examples of that. I have a client that actually we worked with that they got bought by a big DSO, and they said, hey, we got internal marketing all taken care of, everything. So we parted ways with them. They came back to me and this happens sometimes. And they said, hey, we're not getting the new patients that we want, so we want to use your marketing again. And I said, okay, is the DSO going to be cool with this? Because I don't want to have to deal with the headaches of, cutting through red tape and stuff. And they said, no, they're totally fine with that. And I asked them very candidly, I said, how's it been going overall? I know you're not getting as many new patients as you want, but how do you like working with them? How are they supporting you? And he was like, Gary, this has been the best decision of my life. I love it. I know the marketing isn't working exactly the way that we want, but I'm so happy that I moved here. They've made my life so much better. And this is a big DSO. And I was like, man, I was really happy for him that he was able to do that. I have another group that I work with. They have about 100 locations or so, and they run an organization like I've never seen one ran before, where they have each of the offices making pretty much all of their own decisions. Mm-hmm. They have a dentist running the top of the DSO, so he really understands dentistry. And they do now. It's really hard from an operational standpoint. We have to go through, and it's basically like onboarding one practice at a time. So you don't have the economy of scale there from a marketing perspective, which is fine. You don't have to, but it does cost more. There is more time and energy invested in all those kind of things. But they do, the dentists seem to love it that are part of that group. So, and then I've seen everything in between as well. So there's so many options now from a DSO level that you can really kind of pick your flavor.
Well, and I think now that we're talking about it, I thought of a few examples. I was talking to a client the other day who sold late last year. And with the challenges we're experiencing right now with labor, now they have a whole network of peers that they can talk to about best practices, how they're handling certain situations. So whereas before you may have been competitors, now you want to share your secret sauce or share what's working so that everyone can learn from each other. So that's been a pleasant surprise I've heard clients talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big deal. Awesome. Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't covered? I know this is quick, so we've already been on here for 40 minutes, and it just seems like we barely scratched the surface. Is there any topics from either of you guys, Mike or Thomas, that we didn't cover?
Yeah, I tell you, maybe it's not a topic, but just a tip, right? So we were referred just a few minutes ago to these unsolicited offers, and I would just encourage everybody, if you get an offer that really looks good and it might be, all the money you want, just realize that, kind of like going back to your, buying your house analogy, do you make your best offer first? Probably not, right? So there's always, there's likely more money out there, but sometimes it's not all about the money, right? Sometimes it's about other things, other objectives that you might have. It might be like Thomas just talked about, going into an environment where you've got colleagues. Sometimes being a dental business owner can be a lonely place to be, right? So be careful about those offers. Make sure that you are taking some time to identify, just find a quiet place and identify maybe the top 3 most important objectives that you have as you think about transitioning your business, and see if you can find the advisors to help you achieve those things. Because if you can achieve those things in your transaction and they're well thought out, you have a much, much higher probability of achieving that elite exit.
That's awesome. And if people want to reach out to you guys, how can they connect with you? What's the best way to get in touch with you guys? And then also plug your podcast as well.
Yeah, sure. Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, so you can reach me at thomas.farmer@brightworth.com, or you can follow us at brightworth.com, and we have various social media handles that are all listed there. Mike, I think you've got one of the top rated podcasts, so I'll let you plug your podcast and let people know how they can find you.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Yeah, first is the Business Owner Transition Podcast. And, we're not quite as highly ranked as Gary is, but
I think you guys are. I think you guys are better. Yeah, you guys are. You have a pretty wide audience.
Yeah, I don't know how they rate those things, but we're at the top, so that's a good thing. So we must be doing something right. So mike.quinlan@theowneracademy.com. That's theowneracademy.com. Go to the website. You'll see a section on for the general industries that we work with, and also the business owners that we work with. And we do have a special event coming up that I hope that Gary's going to be involved in, which is the Elite Dental Exit Seminar Series. We're going to do our first one in Charlotte on November 18th. And that's going to be a very limited one. We're only going to allow 25 owners at that one. And then next year, we're going to be rolling that out across the country, and those will be much larger events. So if you'd like to get in and see us on November 18th, give us a call. Hit me up on my email at mike.quinlan@theowneracademy.com, and we'll be glad to save you a spot. And you're going to learn a bunch of stuff in a one-day seminar about the elite exit and what you should be doing if you're contemplating a sale within the next 3 years or so.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll drop all the links below. Thank you so much for your guys' time today. You guys did a great job. I learned a lot, and you guys provided a ton of information from the perspective of people who don't know what they're doing, because I haven't ever sold a practice before, I'm in that boat. I know less than even the people who haven't sold before. So I totally get what you guys are putting down, and it's been really good. And I put it on my calendar for November, so I plan on being there, and I look forward to seeing everybody there and meeting you in person, Mike and Thomas. Good to see you again, my friend.
Thanks, Gary. Right. We appreciate it. And I want to thank you for creating this platform of sharing and just educating your audience. I think it's great, and there's a lot of very valuable information. So thanks for doing that, and we appreciate you having us on.
It's pretty cool. My job's just to ask questions and learn. So it's pretty awesome. I say it all the time. Yeah. I get paid to learn and talk to awesome people. So you guys are doing a great job, and look forward to dropping this. Thanks so much, guys.
All right.
Thanks,
Gary.